There are many reasons one may be drawn to a particular song: a joyous melody, an angry guitar riff, or perhaps an energetic beat. None, however, stir the emotions with such clarity as an effective lyric. Through lyrics, artists can speak directly to their audience on a personal level or address an entire generation. Words are powerful tools that are music's only method of expressly instructing the listener. Since Walpole's Castle of Otranto in 1765, regarded by many as the first horror novel, often the power of words has been emboldened by the malevolent and mysterious force that is fear and the effect it has on the human psyche. And yet, for nearly 300 years, we have reinvented new ways to seek this fear for entertainment. Books, movies, television shows, video games, creepypasta and true crime YouTube channels, and of course, popular music. Entire genres like death metal and horrorcore rely on the pursuit of the thrill by driving head-on into the uncomfortable and the unknown. Even artists who have otherwise engaged in danceable pop music and romantic ballads have dipped their toes into this tradition of horror literature, writing lyrics about disturbing crimes and unsolved mysteries. Some are more subtle, keeping the details scant and sprinkling breadcrumbs of a narrative across its runtime. Others choose to push the taboos and are more overt in their reliance on visceral reactions. Either way can be equally compelling. Often presented as fiction, although sometimes blurring the lines between their art and their reality, here are 7 songs that tell dark and twisted tales in popular music. Hey everyone, it's Golden Evil Pump here, better known as Dan Whitell, and it's time for a scary edition of the Slammin Seven series. We're going to be looking chronologically at 7 of my favourite songs that feature fictional mysteries and disturbing encounters within the lyrics. Some are, shall we say, more shocking than others, and I won't get too graphic. Please note that we will be discussing some heavy themes with these songs, so if you're going to listen to the playlist, which is available, as always, at cacophonysessions.com, please exercise caution if you know you're sensitive to violent and traumatic themes. Let's get into it. Number 7. Somewhere near Choctaw Ridge, out in the Mississippi Delta, on the 3rd of June, an unnamed girl is out in the fields near her home when she receives the news that local boy Billie Joe McAllister has jumped from the Tallahatchie Bridge. This news does not seem to provoke many strong feelings from her family. Her father did not care for him, especially. Her brother helps himself to a piece of pie after remembering casually he saw the girl talking to Billie Joe last week, but her mother seems more focused on her lack of appetite. Nevertheless, life goes on and returns to normal for the family. But the feeling that something is hidden under the surface is unshakable. A remark that the local preacher saw a girl that looked a lot like the narrator throwing something off the bridge with Billie Joe goes unaddressed. Could it be that this girl knew more about Billie Joe and his tragic fate than she was letting on? Of course, the central mystery to this Bobbie Gentry song, Ode to Billie Joe, remains just exactly what was thrown off the bridge and its link to Billie Joe's tragic fate. Many have speculated that it was a love child or an engagement ring, something that would indicate they had a more intimate relationship than the song initially hints at. Either way, Bobbie Gentry herself said back when she wrote the song in 1967 that it's about people's apathy and that the significance of the item that's thrown from the bridge is very much open to the listener's interpretation. We'll never fully understand the reasons for Billie Joe doing what he did, just as the narrator's family will never understand. Thus, Billie Joe's death will remain just another insignificant event for that family, despite the implied devastation that will be carried in secret by one of them. It's a sad reflection on society's lack of care for individuals after their demise, other than to perhaps pride for scandalous details. This song is made even more notable for 2 real-life reasons. Firstly, its simple melody carried itself over to be covered by legendary saxophonist King Curtis, who himself was stabbed to death on his own doorstep just 4 years later. And secondly, Gentry herself, who has not been seen from or heard from publicly since 1982, although sources suggest she may be living in a gated community as of 2016, but this remains unclear and a mystery in itself. Number 6. It was a Saturday afternoon on the high street of an unnamed English city. A woman attempts to purchase some new clothes when a man approaches and offers to purchase them for her. Taken back by his chivalry, they arrange a date that evening at a nightclub, and he picks her up at 8 p.m. The woman suffers from self-esteem issues, constantly referring to herself as an old boiler, but nonetheless, they have a good night of dancing before leaving the club together. The man gets a bit pushy about going back to his place, but she declines, feeling a little uncomfortable. As he rushes off, she storms after him, pursuing him until she notices the lack of human presence, the lack of animal presence, but for the stench of urine, alongside errant pages of newspaper blowing about the cold air as she runs past railway bridges and into a distant alley where she eventually catches up to him. He reaches out his hand and subjects her to the fate that she had initially feared but would ultimately be lured to anyway, her desperate screams ringing out for what feels like an eternity. This is The Boiler, which is essentially a spoken word piece by Rhoda Dakar with the Specials, led by Jerry Dammers and now known as the Special AKA, following an exodus of members. Not as well known as many of their previous singles, when they had the late Terry Hall as the singer. By this point, he'd left to form Funboy 3. It's a shocking piece though. It really stays with you once you've heard it. Dammers, the producer, insists that it's only supposed to be listened to once. And I can attest, it's not something that I can stomach on a regular basis. The juxtaposition of the horrific narrative with the beat just continuing over and over, causing you to feel more and more uncomfortable until you realise something's wrong. It shows how dread is at its most gripping when dropped into something with which we feel totally at ease. The matter-of-fact delivery of Dakar's narration continues as she becomes more aware of her vulnerability, and the guttural cries as she's subjected to the violence at the end of this song make for one of the most disturbing experiences in all pop music, especially with those jaunty, funfair-esque keyboards, the carefree trumpet interplay, and the unflinching electronic drum beat. Dakar wrote this as part of the band The Body Snatchers, but it was never recorded until she joined the remnants of the Specials. And she claims that she drew inspiration from a friend's experience. It's a very difficult listen, but I feel it makes a statement about the gruesome reality of sexual violence. And as the music continues uninterrupted, we almost feel guilty for not being able to help. And that is why this song is so effective. There is a small town in Nebraska called Hazrd, in which a young man has lived since he was 7. Ever since he moved there with his mother, he has failed to make many friends, with others judging him and criticizing his character. 3 years ago, he met a girl called Mary, who was the first person in town to see him for who he truly was, and they enjoyed walking together by the town's river, hoping that one day they would both be able to leave Hazrd. That is, one night, until Mary went out and was found tragically dead the next morning. The body was found by the river, and so naturally accusations turned to the young man. He swears his innocence several times before revealing that he intends to make his own exit. The details of the events are unclear from any perspective at this point. Mary is sadly dead, and the man's life has been changed irrevocably. The case remains unsolved. American singer-songwriter Richard Marx wrote and performed this song, and to this day maintains that any examination of the lyrics is unnecessary. He describes it as a stupid song and confesses that there isn't really any deeper meaning behind it. I do love Marx's voice. That's him on the All Night Shift on All Night Long. All Night. The Lionel Richie version, not the Cilla Black version. And he's got songwriting chops, with This I Promise You being one of NSYNC's better ballads. This song is good, but there's not actually that much to it in terms of lyrics. So why has this mystery persisted? Well, After being operational for over half a decade by this point in 1991, MTV had seen the music video rise to its peak in popularity, with acclaimed directors like David Fincher and even David Lynch having a go at making some of them. This particular video was directed by Michael Hausman, and it adds layers to that mystery. Marx's character's scarf is found at the crime scene. On the night of her death, Mary is engaged in a mysterious vehicular tryst with an unknown figure. There's a hothead sheriff played by Robert Conrad, an actor whose vocal coach at one point in his career was Richard Marx's dad, Dick. And this is interspersed with flashbacks to childhood trauma, with his father leaving and his house being burned down. This added just the right level of detail to allow for a deeper dive. But ultimately, and perhaps unsatisfyingly, these clues are just superficial detail and were very much added after the song was written. Here's a snippet of a recent interview on Richard Marx's own channel where he talks about this.
So the question remains, did I kill Mary? Did the sheriff kill Mary? Because he looks pretty fucking suspicious to me. Did Mary just trip and fall and drown in the river? Was it the guy in the car she was making out with? People ask me to this day. People come up to me to my face and either ask me who killed Mary, what happened in that story, which there's no answer. I wrote that song, I swear to you, as an unsolved mystery. I don't even have an opinion about it. But strangely enough, and disturbingly enough, I also have a lot of people who come up to me and ask me if this song was autobiographical. Yeah, I killed some chick in Nebraska years ago and wrote a song about it.
That's exactly what Mary's murderer would say. A grand choral rendition of P.A. Jesu sets the scene as we encounter a girl who at first is winding up an item before singing along with the melody that splashes out of the awakened music box. The box performs the song which she knows well, and she dashes ahead of it with her humming before it stutters to a stop. However, this innocent scene is soon shattered. A crowd of strangers gathers at the foot of the stairs, where it's apparent a girl has been killed. No one knew her but a neighbour. Her family having died before this story takes place, the neglected, orphaned girl is named Susie. And the only thing we really get to understand about Susie is how tender she appears in death, despite an obvious head wound, and the fact that she was known as the girl with the tune. That tune is, of course, the wordless tune from her music box that kept her from despair, but is now imbued with dramatic irony, as listeners will forever fail to separate it from her fate. No one knows who killed little Susie, and as someone who clearly slipped between the cracks in society, it's unlikely anyone seems to care enough to warrant a further investigation. The incident is referred to as a fall, and it appears as if Susie knew herself no one cared about her. Lift her with care. Oh, the blood in her hair. Michael Jackson's most famous horror-themed lyrics are those found written by Rod Temperton for Thriller, but this song for me is unlike any other in Michael Jackson's discography. It was written in 1978, but not recorded until 1995 for the History, Past, Present and Future Book 1 album. Little Susie is one of Jackson's only songs from this period that's not concerned with his own personal experiences or recorded in search of being a radio hit. It was never released as a single. It's actually written to an orchestral waltz. It remains one of his more obscure recordings, although the album sold over 20 million copies, so I'm pretty sure a lot of you will have heard of it. The vocal delivery is so careful and delicate, it stirs the emotions, even when the story itself is, by Jackson's own admission, completely fictional. It was also packaged in the booklet with a 1972 photograph by Gottfried Hellenwein, known as Lichtkind, or Child of Light, and this always had such a creepy effect on me as a child. However, it still gives me less of the creeps than The Girl Is Mine with Paul McCartney. Just saying. Two men are driving through Oakland in a 1979 Granada and smoking illicit substances. The driver is much younger than the passenger, a 50-year-old, out of shape, one-armed man, born with the name Jesus, but referred to by reputation as Jesus, the Pimp. The driver and Jesus go back many years, as Jesus knew the driver's mother and is somewhat of a father figure to him, the narrator looking to impress Jesus with his driving abilities. Jesus has been in prison for the last 15 years, and the narrator is there to pick him up and show the man his street principles through respect and loyalty. Whilst Jesus sleeps, the driver himself recalls the lessons Jesus provided him in his youth. From the pen, he would scribe on how to survive, don't be Microsoft, be Macintosh with a hard drive. And how he influenced his own misogynistic tendencies that he picked up just by being around Jesus, who at one point had the driver's mother as one of his earners. Despite initially not warming to him as a child, it was clear that the narrator's mother urged him to respect Jesus. Life was hard, and his mother struggled until one day, when he was 9, she needed to pay the rent and did not have enough money left over afterwards to pay Jesus. The narrator was able to recall this day in clear detail, from the sound of the birds to his mother's attire and the flight of the ambulance as he remembers the murder of his mother at the hands of Jesus the Pimp, even going so far as to recall her dying declaration, "You're much too beautiful for words." With Jesus now awake, the narrator chooses to lie to his elder and tells him that he knows it was an accident, despite how he really felt about this as they continue to cruise. He's clearly not over the traumatic events of his childhood, and so he parks up, draws his weapon, and kills Jesus in cold blood for revenge and all the pain he has caused with a life lesson of his own. Microsoft motherfuckers, let bygones be bygones, but since I'm a Macintosh, I'm a double-click your icon. After the score has been settled, all he is left with is his mother's last words ringing in his ears and an uncertain future of destruction. Released by hip-hop group The Coup from Steal This album in 1998, lead MC Boots Riley delivers one of the most detailed and fascinating monologues in hip-hop history on this song, Me and Jesus the Pimp in a '79 Granada last night. The story is constantly bringing new details into the narrative, and the way Jesus is described, even when we think that Riley's character still has respect for this despicable figure, really paints Jesus the Pimp to be one of the most compelling villains in all of hip-hop. This song isn't so much mysterious as it is twisted, and the fairly rudimentary 1998 beat with all its Oakland-based samples can help to lull you into a false sense of security on this one. You might think this is just another hip-hop song about camaraderie between some colourful characters, but the way that Riley delivers those painful memories and the slow build-up of resentment throughout the verses is incredible. The song's very explicit. It makes full use of the 90s hip-hop vernacular, but as evidenced by the soulful cries of what we can assume is his mother at the appropriate points in the song, that suggests to me it's making a bigger statement and about those who come from backgrounds that are riddled with abuse and violence, are often unable to break free, no matter how much they change their perspective and try to adapt as a person. It's really tragic. William grew up in Harlem, New York, as an aspiring gangster from the age of 14. He grew up without a father, and his mother had her own substance abuse issues. After dropping out of school for selling drugs, Billie grew tired of selling cannabis and graduated to more and more violent crime, aware of the benefits an increase in reputation would yield. Aspiring to be more evil than even Sean Puffy Combs, Billie got involved in a situation in which he would have to pass an initiation in order to prove himself worthy enough to join a gang. This was no mere hazing, however, and Billie was to participate in an unspeakable organized act of sexual violence. The victim was selected, blindfolded with her shirt, and led to a nearby rooftop where the violent, despicable crime was done. Under pressure from his accomplices, he removed her blindfold and motioned to pull the trigger to remove what thimble of hope she had left in her ability to identify them as a witness, and then the sight he was confronted with surprised everyone. It was the bruised and battered face of his own mother. Realizing what he has done, the witness tells the story that reveals the night ended with the conscienceless perpetrator throwing himself from the roof before somebody else killed what remained of his mother. The witness remains braggadocious about his participation in the event, but it appears he now lives with the fear of a dance with the devil, who now follows him everywhere he goes. Okay, that's a lot. It's gratuitous, it's clinical in its haunting description of a gang ritual that morphs into the classic Greek mythology of Oedipus. This 2001 horrorcore song, Dance with the Devil, from New York rapper and activist Immortal is a mixture of gruesome imagery and a stirring piano sample from Francis Lay's theme from Love Story, which played over the opening and end credits to the eponymous 1970 movie. Immortal has discussed the song in much the same way Richard Marx has over the years. Much like Marx scoffs at the idea that any of it is autobiographical. He has, however, stated that it is based on an urban legend and that he does know of a real crime that took place that had events unfurl in a similar way. So it does have some basis in reality. Again, there's no real layers of mystery to this one. It's just incredibly bold with its messaging, and the morbid narrative is delivered with such conviction and authenticity that it becomes so utterly compelling. Immortal Technique has talked extensively about the vicious cycle that is street violence. Whilst there are many more famous examples of horrorcore reaching the mainstream, Eminem songs like Kim and Stan itself, one of the greatest hip-hop songs of all time, nothing quite exposes the debasement of this kind of gangster lifestyle and the evils that it can lead one to commit in the quest for money and reputation. This is a powerful track. It's 9 minutes long, and the second part is a little bit unrelated, but part one will blow you away. A bright morning in early September, and our office worker point of view is holding hands with Carmen, a co-worker that he has been seeking the courage to ask on a date. However, it's not at all what he imagined this situation would feel like. As they look out the window together, the anxiety he has always felt has now dissipated, and he knows that there is only one thing left to do. As he leaps from the window, he notes how much the clear skies complement his decision to fly today. He leaves us with his thoughts as he falls to the ground, aiming for the parking lot. Flying by Living Colour is a marvellous song that appears really strange upon first listen, with the lyrics about a guy writing a song as he falls out of an office building. But if you look at the facts of this song, this is a New York City band, and it was released as a reunion album for the band in 2003, the underrated Kaleidoscope. You can then start to deduce the real meaning of the song. Although never confirmed in the lyrics, the song is taking place during the events of the 9/11 atrocities in 2001. The lack of an on-the-nose reference within the lyrics, I think, keeps it respectful and avoids it feeling like a rather cloying appeal to emotion. Similar attempts can, as with criticisms of the film/book Dear John, for instance. The chorus line of "such a lovely day to go flying" is actually ironic in nature, given this new context, and it's delivered with great venom in its final iteration by singer Corey Glover. It suggests that the band were reeling from the senseless nature of the horrific events of that day. The tensely wound-up funk of Doug Wimbish's bass, Will Calhoun's hard-hitting drums, and the frustrated, almost unexpressed anger in Vernon Reid's raw guitar tones make for quite a moving listen. You can also check out the live version from the 2009 Paris concert album. That's available on streaming as well. That's really lengthy, but it's monstrous. However, all this power is held back masterfully by Corey Glover through his restrained, melodic telling of what is really a brief and tragic love story, showing that perhaps there is hope after all, even when real-world events appear more macabre than some of the fictional ones that we've already encountered on this list. It's a masterpiece. And that's the list. Make sure to like and subscribe for more Slammin Seven videos like this one, perhaps with a slightly more uplifting accompanying playlist, all of which can be found on Apple Music and Spotify, over on our website, by the way. Let me know what you think of these songs. Tell me what are your favourite disturbing tales from popular music in the comments below. Don't have nightmares, but do stay spooky. Like and subscribe.